Fellas, we're back. I know my last video when I did my 241 transfer case, I lost footage on the reassembly, but we are back at it due to it being excessively noisy. I don't know if you can hear this. That's a brand new bearing with less than 100 miles. And then I want you to look at the lines on this. Don't these lines indicate this race has been spinning within the case? There's a big flat spot, and when it hits right, this bearing actually locks up. This is a brand new Japanese bearing, brand new. And then if we come over here to the case, you can see the shiny grooves where the race has been spinning in the bore. So yeah, you can't make it up. So what we're going to do is we are going to stake this bearing, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to dimple exactly 90 degrees inside this case, and when you take a punch and you dimple in, you actually create a raised edge around the dimple. And then once we create the raised edge, we are going to we're going to use some Loctite 660, and then we are going to attempt to get this race not to move. Now I ordered a new bearing, National bearing. Okay, so when I was a kid, National was a great brand. This bearing is like flawless. This bearing is made in China. Let me tell you what I think about Chinese stuff. I have some Harbor Freight stuff that I've had for 20 years, and I've had some Harbor Freight stuff that I took back same day. China gets a rap. China, maybe it's well deserved. Japanese bearing, junk. Absolute junk. Chinese bearing feels good. Whether you get a part made in China, part made in the USA, it doesn't matter if they have quality control standards in place. So hopefully this Chinese bearing is going to be fine. It feels amazing as compared to this. But without quality control, you know, you get what you get. I think half of Warren winches, which is my most favorite winch, I think more than half of the Warren winches are made in China. I have a Harbor Freight Badlands winch, zero issue, had it for a long time. So you know what, I'm not going to get on the Chinese sucks. You just have to judge each individual item you get from China on its own merits. And today, this bearing from Japan sucks. Now, maybe the bearing was good and because the race spun in the case, but you know, I don't know. So we have all the parts laid out here. We're going to go through a full assembly. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to get a stake, clean this up, and get this bearing put in. And then, I mean, there's not a whole lot to show you. I'm just going to take a punch and punch holes that are exactly the same distance apart from each other to create a little bit of pressure on the outer race. We'll use the Loctite 660, and we will get this bearing put back in. And then once this bearing is in, we'll go through the whole assembly of everything. And all the other bearings feel fine. This double roller here feels perfect. But I'm going to replace, so this bearing, I'm going to replace it too because it's on the same shaft as the bad bearing. So I have a new one of these. If you've never pulled this bearing out of the case, you are going to need this puller. And this puller goes in, it wedges out, it grabs the inside of that bearing, and it pulls it up. And the 241 cases, if you screw it up, you could be hurting. They're getting really hard to find. So I just dumped a ton of cash in that puller, and believe it or not, it just pulled this thing right out. So we have a new one of these we'll be installing as well. All right, let's get things cleaned up and ready to go. Stand by. Okay, can you see the dimple I put in there and the dimple I put right there? I went across from these knobs, which look to be 90 degrees across from each other. I don't think you need to dimple the metal hard, because when I reach in there and touch it, that little tack created a really good sized ridge. And if it's too big, you don't want the race rocking on the dimples. So I went gentle, and right now we're going to go ahead and we're going to put the race adhesive in. I'm going to tap the bearing in to put the clip in, and then we're going to move on. So hang tight. Okay, bearings in. I have this bearing tool that fits the outer race just perfect. Remember in my last video, I tell you to always press against the surface that makes contact with the surface. Don't tap these in on the inner race. You could damage the balls. So this tapped it in. What you really want to be cautious of, I don't think I'm going to be able to show you this. If you put too much of that bearing glue and it pops out, I don't know if you can see, but I barely see it barely comes out. You don't want it spooging out and then it just gets all over your seal. So I just got barely enough in there, and I could tell when I put the divots in the bore, this thing went in nice and snug, and the bearing, it rotates perfect. Nothing like the other bearing. So all right, I'm gonna get the clip in and we'll keep going. All right, we got the bearing in. She spins flawless. The other bearing is the bearing that's part of the oil pump. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this. We're going to tap the bearing out, and then I have another national Chinese bearing. I'm just telling you, these things feel amazing, and the Japanese bearing felt like junk. Everybody's going to jump on the Timken wagon, but I hate to tell you this, that I looked at a couple of Timkens and they also said made in China. So you just don't know what you get. All you do is you hope that the respective companies have QC procedures in place to keep the quality high. But back in the day when I was growing up, National was a US brand from what I remember, and SKF, National, Fag, and Timken were like the top 4 brands. But I guess you can't get anything made in America anymore. So I'm going to press this one out. I'm going to put this one back in. This one and this one are the same bearings, and then once all the bearings are replaced, we're going to press this one in. I'll try to show you this live, and then we'll start assembly of the case. Right now I'm just replacing the 3 bearings that I'm just going to do while we're in here. The bearing inside this output right here, this thing is flawless, and there was no name brand on this. I have no idea where this was made, but this is the one with the clip in the middle. This one is perfect. And I'm also not going to do the bearing that's inside the shaft, because that one feels perfect as well. So let's go ahead and get this one pressed out. We're just going to tap. This one comes right out really easy. We'll put the other one in, and then we'll move on to the insertion of this one in the case. Okay, hang on. Okay, so let's go over this bearing. I'm going to see if you can see this here. This is the bearing that I took out. You know, I can't say it's a bad quality. It feels a little, I don't know, chromy. This is the bearing that I'm replacing it with, and this thing feels like it's beefier, but I don't know how you get any beefier. So I don't know. This is a different bearing. We'll see how it works. But this bearing here and this bearing are on the same shaft, and that shaft was so noisy when I spun it and crunchy that I'm doing both, but this one feels like a better bearing. This bearing is a USA made INA, and this bearing here just says SCE 2416, and there's no stamp of origin. So we're going back with this bearing, and we'll see how it goes. All right, stand by. All right, so this bearing here, there's a special tool. It's Miller 5066. This tool inserts into this bearing. You put it in the bore, and then there's a bearing handle. And this is what we're going to tap this bearing in with. I think this is important because these are real thin, more like a sheet metal instead of machined steel. Even though the metal might be hardened, I think it's a lot thinner. And I think it's important that this goes in straight. So the other thing is, I don't know if you can see it on the camera. There's a chamfer right here. See the chamfer? The instructions say that you seat the bearing to the bottom, flush with the bottom of the chamfer. So that's right out of the manual. So we are going to put this in, and we are going to seat this to the bottom of the chamfer. Now what I like to do, see, make sure I'm not going in cockeyed. I am. So now I know I need to hit on this other side. Now we're square again. We're still square. And you're going to check the chamfer. So you can see the bearing there. If you can see it, it's seated at the bottom of that chamfer. That's exactly where it's seated. Now, you saw how hard I hit that to get this in. I already knew that. If you don't have this tool to extract it, and what happens is when you screw it up, these bottom legs right here expand. They expand, and it grabs the underneath of the bearing, and it pulls it out. So you adjust it, it grabs underneath, and then you extract it. This is a nightmare. This is Miller tool 8148, and I'm not sure if the center section was a different number, but this is mandatory. I mean, as far as I'm concerned. So this bearing is in, it's seated to the bottom of the chamfer. Part of me thinks I could go in just a tap more, maybe. It's hard to tell. Yeah, I think we're good. So that's all three of the bearings that I'm changing. So that's the bearings. So let me back out. I will back out, dummy. So what I'll do now is I'm going to get everything cleaned. I'm going to get all the edges cleaned, ready for sealant. I'm not using anaerobic sealant on this. I'm just going to use standard RTV. We are getting ready to start going back together. I'm not changing any of the other bearings. So let me get set, we'll prep, and we will figure out how to reassemble. Okay, stand by. Hey, I want to bring something up here. Can you see this machined edge? That was full of RTV, so I scrape it off with a razor blade, and then what I do is I go in with a piece of red Scotch-Brite. Do you see how it's a nice machined edge now? Maybe if I can focus. When it comes to using sealers, you got mechanical bonding and you have chemical bonding. And if you don't get all the old RTV out of the surface grooves, you reduce the mechanical bonding. So the mechanical bonding is when the sealer grabs the small ridges, and the chemical bonding is when the sealer actually dries and hardens. You want both those. You may not know it. I used to be a Learjet mechanic. How many composite parts are on an airplane that are just basically all glued together? Trust me, you have to have mechanical and chemical bonding, and the best way to do that is to prep your actual surfaces. So all of my cases, the surfaces are prepped, and I rarely have leaks in anything I do, because no leaks it's just all prep work. It's like a paint job on a car. It's all prep work. Spraying the paint takes an hour or two. Prepping takes days. So I just wanted to bring that up. Take care. You don't want to pull this thing apart again. Prep your surfaces. Get good mechanical bonding with good chemical bonding, and you should never have a leak. Okay, let me finish cleaning up and we'll be ready to assemble. Okay, so we got it cleaned up. What we're going to do is always make sure I don't got a little shard of something going to get in the bearing. We're going to use this. We are going to tap it in. You want to ensure that you drive it straight. Don't get cockeyed. You'll know if you do. And I believe that's all this one gets. This one doesn't seat all the way flush, if I recall correctly. Beautiful. Okay, that's that one. And we're going to go and we'll get prepped for the inside bearing, and we'll be right back. All right, you flip this case over, you got your shaft in here, and now you have to put this clip in to retain the shaft. And I'm gonna give a shout out to my boys over at Jeep TJ. They just did an NSG 370 rebuild. People have got to start doing their own stuff because there's fewer and fewer people. And if you haven't checked out Jeep TJ, you oughta. I'll be honest with you, the favorite part of their show that I like watching is the father and son aspect. I didn't get that with my dad, and my boy has no interest, and I don't get that either. And that saddens me because he has zero skills for working on cars, and that's fine. It's some people's thing or not. But to watch a show where the family's involved is absolutely amazing. And he talks about the importance of a good pair of snap ring pliers. He could not be more correct. It is all about the quality of your tools. My torque wrenches are protos and snap-ons, a lot of my snap-on sockets. This is a KD tool made in Taiwan. It's fair, but it doesn't matter because I'm challenged on these things anyways. But yeah, check out Jeep TJ. Let me get the snap ring on, and usually this is one of the easier ones. Just widen it and God, it should just go on the shaft. This is a really hard one. And you get it down as far as I can get it, and then it just snaps right in. And basically what that's going to do, it just prevents that shaft from walking out. That snap ring is in the groove of the shaft, riding up against the inner race of the bearing we just installed. All right, and that spins beautiful. Go Chinese bearings. Okay, I'll be right back. All right, so this is the pickup screen. This pickup screen has about 200, 250 miles on it. Look at all that junk in there. That can seriously impede oil flow. Clean your cases good. And pro tip, more RTV is not necessarily better than less. I would go less because all of these little nuggets in here are little RTV bits. And that's really weird because I usually don't put too much. There are a couple little pieces of metal, maybe from the roller bearing starting to fail. But clean this, it comes out easy. Get good oil flow and do not put too much RTV. This thing for 250 miles, that's pretty horrible. All right, let me get this cleaned up. I'm gonna get the case all cleaned, everything wiped down. I'm going to clean all these edges of the old RTV, and then we will start the assembly process. Okay, thanks, bye. All right, here we go, back together. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna install our annulus gear. Everything has been cleaned and blown off. I don't think there's anything special about installing this gear. It just kind of snaps in. And as far as I can tell, everything is symmetrical, and even the ring, it looks completely symmetrical, so I don't even think it matters which way it goes. If it does, I'm sure somebody will chime in and I can pull it out, but it all looks pretty self-explanatory. Boy, this is challenging today. Be a hater. So the gear is in. You know it's in because it just sets in there. It just really easy to get cockeyed. All right, once you get that in there, then it's time for the planetaries. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a little bit of assembly lube. I'm just going to put a nugget on here just because when I rebuild my engines and stuff, it's just a habit. Assembly lube around a little bit. Now, inside here is a plastic spacer. Make sure that's dead center. And on the outside is another spacer. Don't forget the spacers. And what I'm going to do to hold it in place is I'm just going to put a nugget of assembly lube basically that's just going to hold it in place. So if anything moves, it won't miss a line. This is real thin plastic. I guess you could stab your shaft wrong. Beautiful. All my gears were in good shape. I checked them last time. All right, stand by. Now that we got the annulus in, we got the planetaries in, we have our spacer in. Let's prep to assemble this portion of the case. So stand by. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to install this output spline shaft. But here's what you got to be careful. So this is assembled and there's your planetaries. Do you see that plastic ring? Right there's that plastic ring. Make sure that thing is centered before you do anything. If it's not centered, you could crunch your bearing. And by not centered, I mean, what if it was like that? Do you see that? So move this over, get it centered. It has like a little relief. I think it rides in. It centers itself real nice. And then you should be good to go. So let me prep and we're going to tap this shaft in. So stand by. Alright, we've got a thin bead RTV on there. Let's go ahead and put the retainer cover on. Ooh, let's see. So you're going to notice there are dowels. So we have to find the dowels. So I think these two dowels go here and here. Just like that. And then we are going to put our bolts in. They're all the same size. I could have cleaned them better, I guess. Always start your bolts by hand and aluminum first. Don't be a dumbass. Well, that's interesting. No, it's the same size. Threads on the dowel start more shallow or deeper. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to run these in with the gun, zero tightening with the gun. Hard. It wasn't cross-threaded, just I think I had a bunch of goop on there. Alright, so I'm not going to show you this. I got to go back. I'm going to get the torque wrench. And these are going to be torqued to 16 foot-pounds in a star pattern. So let me get to torquing, and there's no reason for you to watch that. 16 foot-pounds. Okay, stand by. Alright, so hopefully you can see this. We're going to insert this. And dang, I don't know what my dead blow is. So what I'm doing is I'm spinning this, and I'm just using the wooden portion of the hammer. And you hear it, you can hear the change of the tone, and it's bottomed out. And when you spin this, oh my God, it's like butter. Flawless. Absolutely flawless. Hey, effing A, Chinese bearings. I can see all the comments that's going to get, but I'm just saying. Japanese bearings. This brand that came in the kit is Nachi. No Nachi. National. Flawless. Alright, let me get set for the next set. Stand by. Alright, this is going to be difficult to show you because it's kind of figured out as you go. But we installed this Then the next thing we do is we take this and this. Remember, you have pads on here, make sure they're still good. And then this knob goes inside that hole over there, and these gears line up and all this BS. And then once that's lined up, then you can get your shaft in. That's in, the shaft's in. Then what we're going to do, hell, I don't know what we're doing. We are going to put this in. So we're going to clean this off. So, oh, Chinese bearings, baby. Just throwing that out there. It's all about Chinese bearings. And let me get this figured out. There we go. Chinese bearings right there. All right. So, dang. So once that's in, then I think the next thing we're going to do is try to fish this whole piece on at the same time. So I think if we get this, and I think if we get this, and we put this like this, hold on. I have no idea if you could even see anything. No, that went over like a fart in a spacesuit. Come on, baby. Dead blow. Junk. Stand by. And why exactly isn't this going on? There it goes. Holy shit. Man, a freaking Chinese bearing. Are you kidding me? I don't know, can you even see any of this? Look how smooth, man. Freaking Chinese bearing. I can't wait to hear you guys' comments. You said I used a Tamkin. Whatever. Alright, so the chain is in. Now we have to clip this. She is not in all the way. Hold on, let me give it a dead blow. There it went. There it went. All right. I'm not sure what's not to like. I know one thing. I will only ever buy Chinese bearings. Huh. Oh, you can't make it up. Well, that's in, that's in. I know I got to do a seal on the other side. We'll get to that. So, you know what I did? I so choked. Yeah, I forgot to put the slider in. God dang it. Chinese instructions. Alright. This goes on underneath the chain and slides down here. Let me have to pull this chain back off and redo this real quick. Alright, stand by. Alright, that piece is in. That little slider right here. Believe it or not, that took like 3 minutes. Once that's in, you have this spring assembly here, and it has two insert spring holders that go on there like that. Now, look at this. See that big chunk of blue in there? That used to be one of the old shifter things that were bad, and man, you can clean and drop shite in there, but sometimes you gotta just get it all, you know. All right, that's in, that's in. Now, you almost forgot last time, is this magnet. This magnet goes right here. This magnet is an important piece because it catches little pieces of metal that could float around in there and jack your gears up. So don't forget that little magnet that goes in that slot. So I thought, yeah, let's just RTV that in and won't fall out. But then you got RTV floating around your case, plugging up your pickup screen. So I'm thinking I would not, absolutely would not RTV that magnet. Just don't forget it. Alright, let me get set up for the next step. We have to install the reverse or the four-wheel drive sensor, and then we have the shift rod we need to get installed, and then the last thing we'll do, I mean, I'm not sure what else to show you. We have to put the case on. I'll show you that a little bit. And there's a few other little pieces we got to put on. But all right, stand by. Let me get set up, and we'll go from there. Okay, so don't get excited. We didn't go far. From where we were to here, all I did was dry fit the case. I tightened up the ball retention and the cam shifter, and then I dry fit the case. I put 2 bolts in there to hold it. Right now, let me see if I can get you set up here. What you need to do is lay this bad boy down, and then when you install this, it pulls and it lines that cam lobe up. You should, jeez, let me see here. It's hard to get the leverage. You need to shift this to make sure that everything is lined up right. Okay, so see how that goes down? That goes What I think is I have this on the wrong plane. I converted this over to a bolt because it was way easier to get off and tighten. So if you're bolted to the transmission here, see, that's in 4-wheel drive because it's turning. That's in 4-wheel drive. That's in neutral. And I think one more down. I thought one more down would be 2-wheel drive. Alright, maybe I'm thinking of this backwards. See, this. I'm wondering if it doesn't go right there. So let me play with this. You got to get this indexed right. I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. I might just run in and review the old video and see where it was when I took it off, because it was in 2-wheel drive when I took it off. Let me play with this. We'll get it sorted and we'll be back, and then we'll actually split the case back apart, clean the edges, RTV, and then we have a few more parts and the tone ring to put on, and we're just about done in the yokes. Okay, bye. All right, real quick while I'm thinking about it, we're going to go ahead and install this input seal. So I have this Miller tool 4454, and we'll just use it. It lines up perfectly with the seal. We'll just see how they rock. You just gotta be real careful with these things. Alright, so that's perfectly flush. That seal's in. The other two seals were like brand new, so I just kept them in the case and kept them. So now I'm going to go ahead and split the case. I'm confident everything is where it should be. It shifts correctly. We're going to seal it and we're going to put the case back together. So let's get going on that one. Alright, I want to talk about this. I don't know, I think it's a reluctor wheel. And do you see it has a divot right there? That's because this pin that goes in this hole, maybe I can get it in. So this pin is in place, right? And then this slides on. And if you rotate it, it pops in and it's in. It won't spin. I've watched a couple of YouTube videos, and you need to be careful when you pull this off and you look at it. If you have like a big dimple somewhere on here, this pin can fall out and you could tighten this up and crush this and have a big issue. So I'm going to put a little dab of grease, and when I tighten the yoke, I'm going to try to make sure that this stays on with a little bit of grease but stays pushed to the back. But I've heard people say that if you just take the yoke off, that this thing can come forward enough to maybe let this pin fall out, and if you don't have this pin dead vertical and you pull this off, you have a problem. So you have got to make sure that this pin maybe is vertical, maybe is held in with a little bit of grease or something, but don't lose this when you tighten. So if this rotated over and I started tightening it and everything was vibrating around, what would stop that from falling out? Hopefully if this stayed seated it wouldn't, but if this bounced around until the yoke tightened up against it, it very well could. So there's not a lot to show here. You put the pin in, you index it. It's indexed because you can see, I don't know if you can see, maybe you can't see. You can see it goes in. If it wasn't indexed, it would hit just like that, right? You rotate it and then it goes in and this doesn't spin, and I think that's what operates your speedometer. Make sure this baby's seated good. Very important. All right, so the only other thing to do is I'm going to swab a little bit of RTV on this, put that on, and then we are going to go ahead and get the yoke in. So let's get this thing finished up because I'm just about over it. All right, bye. You know, one more thing I want to cover. How do you know this doesn't go on like this, or like this, or like this, or like this, or like this? Right? Do you see this cut out, that beveled edge inside here? And if you look in all these holes, see this one down here has a hole in it? I think the oil drains out that and drains down into that hole and goes back into the case. I could be wrong, but you know what? I just think that's how it goes. And I think that would also mean that my sensor is facing in that direction, and I think it's clipped into this right here. So FYI, indexing of this I think is from that bevel to allow drainage through that hole, this hole right here inside the machine area, because all these other ones are solid. This one has a hole for oil drain. Okay, that's it. All right. So you put the two together, dry, your springs, all your cams, all those things. Put your shift arm on, and then you want to cycle to make sure you hit all of your speeds and gears prior to final assembly. So if I'm spinning the input, notice that the front drive shaft doesn't spin, but the rear one is spinning. That's 2-hole drive. Then I go up a click, and now they're all spinning. Now I'm in 4. Then I go up a click, and nothing spins. I'm in neutral. And then I go one more click, and then you can see I spin the heck out of the front, and the rear and the front outputs barely spin. So do yourself a favor, cycle these prior to final assembly. You'll save yourself some heartache. I hope that makes sense to you. But now I'm back into 2 because I'm spinning the engine input and the front is not spinning. And freaking Chinese bearings feel good. All right, let me resplit this case, RTV, and go back together. All right, stand by. All right, so we RTV'd this, we torqued it on. Let me tell you, the pin that I showed you with that reluctor wheel, this shaft inside can pull out. You're gonna have to sit there and bobble with it and pull it. I think it has to spline with the oil pump just right. Be careful. But you expose the hole, you pin it, and then when you push that back, be careful not to push it back inside. So what I did was, I know I'm good because my nut would hand tighten with 1 or 2 threads showing right before torquing, and I know I didn't go in any. Put this on, torque this to a butt load. You put this in, torques, and then this is going to hook on, and I have these little push things with zip ties built onto them. We'll get that on. But let me tell you, breaking Chinese bearing right there. That is flawless. It doesn't even make one noise, and it is super smooth. What else? What else? What else? Oh, I did put this in. I believe this is the 4-hole drive. Indicator light on the dash, maybe. This is for the speedometer. This seal is in El Perfecto. What happened to my wrench? Okay, that shifted. So that's in 4-hole drive, because if the impact turns, the rear output turns, and the front output turns, you're in 4. We click one more, neutral. I turn the input, and nothing happens in the back. All right, hold on. This one, this is just like on the trail. You know how you have to like put it in neutral and let your car rock back or forth just a touch? The 4 low, I think it is. And then when you turn this, you can definitely tell. Now hear that back and forth? I think in my other video, I put in there why it does that. That's perfectly normal. When I'm on the trail, this back and forth, there's a big spline shaft, and it jumps back and forth a 1/4 inch before it catches in the other direction. I think they put this in here as a way to not let it bind and do overpressure. But when people say it's making these noises, they all do that. And I've been in other TJ Rubicons and they do that. If yours don't do that, I don't know what to tell you, but mine does that, always has done that, and has worked good. So I don't got no more noises on my shafts. Look at that. Before, this is where my marbles would sound. Look how long that Chinese bearing rolls. God dang it. Flawless. So, alright, I'm going to go get the other yoke. You know about the yoke. Put it on, torque it to butt load, and you're good to go. Vent tube. I just can't believe. I think I bought the full rebuild kit from the company, and yeah, not happy. I think I'd rather source individual bearings from places and go with higher quality stuff instead of the kit, but do what you got to do. I didn't have 200 miles on it, and this thing was sounding absolutely horrendous. Questions, post them below. Timken fans, get over it, because I'm on Rock Auto and half the Timkens are made in China. It is what it is. I don't know what else I can tell you other than I'm about done with this TJ. We just need to be driving because October's coming in Arizona. It's amazing. All right, that's it. Have a great day. The Maligator says hi. It's a whole bunch of dog right there. All right, you guys have a great Sunday. Bye.